So let's talk about first, what is separation anxiety? Kind of talk about what is separation anxiety, because a lot of people say, my dog has separation anxiety, right? They'll call a trainer on the phone and say that. And you'll say, okay, well, what makes you say that? I had one guy who called and said, my dog has separation anxiety. And I said, okay, how do you know? Well, that's what the vet told me. I said, okay, well, what did you tell the vet or show the vet that caused him to say that? Well, the dog ate my shoe. This is an example of what I would call an extreme case of separation anxiety. This, which is clawing at the door at the point where the owner's left. This is really common, that you're going to see the destruction at the points where the owner's gone, the windows where they can see, the doors that the person left through. And the fact is, when you get a dog, you really are not going to know a lot of the time, especially if you've adopted it. It's interesting. Genetics really can play a part in separation issues, and I think this is something that gets kind of overlooked. There was a study that was done in 2001 by Cornell University Animal Behavior Clinic by a guy named Takuchi, and they found that of all of the purebred dogs who were in this study, who were affected by separation anxiety, they were most likely to be gun dogs. Let's talk about the fun subject of, I've got a dog with separation anxiety. What the heck do I do with this dog when I want to go out and have a life? Better known as management. Yeah, this is the tricky part. And this is the part that wears people down over time. And they say, I can't deal with this dog anymore. And I can honestly say that as an owner. Now, I'm going to tell you, as an owner, I really did the behavior modification protocols, obviously being a behavior person also, and everything else. But I would say that I did 6 weeks straight of very heavy-duty behavior mod where Sierra was not left by herself at all, ever. I will say that after 6 weeks, and I did not put her on any kind of medication or anything, I just did, behavior mod. After 6 weeks of this, I looked at my husband and I said, one of us has to be on drugs. And I think maybe both. But yeah, so we did end up putting her on something, which I will talk about. Okay, so let's talk about the alone zone. Where do we leave the dog? And this is an important thing, because if you make the wrong decision on that, it can go awry. We mentioned crates earlier. So the best form of containment is going to depend on the individual dog. It's going to depend on the level of separation anxiety. What's the advantage of the gated area as opposed to free roaming the house? If you have a dog who's destructive when you're gone, it's a big advantage. No, seriously, because, they can't get to the door, they can't get to the window, they can't eat your couch. So I want to talk about behavior modification, because, we've talked about sort of management every day, which is really important, and where to keep the dog when you're gone, which is really important. But now, what else can we do to make this better? So, first of all, departure cues. Do you guys all know what departure cues are, what I mean by that? For those of you who don't, departure cues are those things that tell your dog that you're getting ready to leave. Most of us have sort of like a routine, and especially if you're going to work every day, you do certain things in the morning. You get up, you take a shower, you dry your hair, you eat breakfast, you read the paper, whatever it is. And then we have the departure cues that get closer to your actual departure time, which are things like putting on your jacket, picking up a briefcase or a purse, picking up your keys, and so forth, whatever else you do. So there are some dogs who really start to get stressed when they see us starting to do these things. And what do? They just get a little antsy. They start being really clingy. They may whine, Now, that said, there are other dogs who don't do that at all. I'll tell you, Sierra was a very strange case. We talked a little bit before about how dogs can get hyper-attached, right? The ones that follow you everywhere. So we talked about timing out, right, the marrow bones and the Kongs and so forth, so that when you're gone longer, the dog still has something. I do want to mention something. You may have read, and I certainly read in the literature, that when you are gone, you've given your Kong or your marrow bone or whatever, and it's something your dog really loves, right? And let's say he's happily chewing on it. When you come back, there's a lot of recommendations out there that you should go over and take the thing away from him, right? And the idea being, which makes sense, that the dog learns to associate your absences with really good stuff happening. And that logically makes total sense. But, you know where I'm going with this? Okay, here's something you do. What can happen with some dogs? Sierra never had any kind of issues with it's my stuff, or I could take anything away from her. But let me tell you, when I started coming home and going towards the Kong, all of a sudden her head was lowered and there was this. Okay? And we put that to, stop to that immediately. But it really can be that it can take weeks and it can take months, and in severe cases it may take longer than that. So I think it's important for people to understand that at the beginning and to be committed to sticking with the program, and that if you are a trainer, that you really support the person and not just go and do the one session and then fall out of their lives forever, because they are going to need support. Because really, I have had clients where it was sort of an easy thing to set up the routine, and then they really took it from there, and it was kind of mild. Now, if it's a really severe case, it's probably not going to be like one session. It's probably going to be a few. And I will do things like set up sessions probably a couple weeks apart, again, depending, because it may be that I have to really do things sooner. But it may be that they do this, this, and this, and I want to check in with them sooner, but go back in 2 or 3 weeks to modify things. I tend to leave myself reminders to check in with the person, because sometimes they will not actually call the trainer because they don't want to bother you or whatever it is. So I want to make sure that I check in with them and see how it's